What's up, you guys? Welcome to Political Fight Club. I'm your host, Robert Durden, and I'm going to be bringing you bad news from Fukushima, Japan. And when I read this headline, I was somewhat surprised by it, but not really. In our topsy-turvy world, everything seems to be going crazy nowadays and be almost cartoonishly like evil. But basically, they're in Fukushima, where they had that nuclear meltdown at their reactor there about a decade ago. They're now taking all the contaminated wastewater from that reactor and dumping it back into the sea. So that's not good. And what they're saying is that, like, the company that owns the nuclear reactor in the Japanese government, that's Tokyo Electric Power Company, they're saying that the water has been treated so that the radionuclides and the tritium, which is left over when you have a meltdown and can cause mutations or death in marine life or people if they're exposed to it, they're down to such negligible levels that they're just saying, okay, well, we don't want to keep it in barrels anymore. We don't want to treat it because it's costly to treat it. We're just going to dump it right back into the ocean. That's not a good idea. And basically, they're making a decision against the Japanese people too, because the majority of the Japanese people don't want the water dumped back into the ocean. They worry what's going to happen to the marine life that they count on for, food, stuff like that. And the Japanese government is countering with, well, we don't really have a choice. We don't have the space to keep it stored. So Greenpeace stepped in and was like, basically, no, you guys can't do this. We haven't really adequately studied the effects on tritium and all these radionuclide levels enough to know that this is going to be safe to do. And the only reason you guys are doing this is because you're claiming there's not enough space to store this wastewater, but there is. So there's plenty of like on-site storage where it actually happened, where they could keep treating it. And they say in like other districts around where it happened, there's plenty of space for them to do it. So the Tokyo Electric Power Company and the Japanese government are just doing this because it's cheaper, is basically it. So I'm going to read this to you from the Associated Press and then from Common Dreams. This first part is from Associated Press. The plant's operator, Tokyo Electric Power Company, and government officials say that tritium, which is not harmful in small amounts, cannot be removed from the water, but all other selected radionuclides can be reduced to releasable levels. Some scientists say the long-term impact on marine life and low-dose exposure of such large volumes of water is yet unknown. The government stresses the water's safety, calling it, quote-unquote, treated, not, quote-unquote, radioactive, even though radionuclides can only be reduced to disposable levels, not to zero. The amount of radioactive material that would remain in the water is yet unknown, end quote. That's the part from the Associated Press. So that's what I'm talking about. Like, they're not erring on the side of caution. They're erring on the side of just, like, capitalism, telling them what is and isn't okay for them to dump into the ocean. So that's what's happening here, and that's why I'm so frustrated with it, and why I wanted to bring it to your guys' attention, is this is what happens when you have, capitalists have a huge say in what your legislation is that even when it comes down to something like radiation after a nuclear meltdown, the company that owns the power plant is not even going to be forced to pay the money to dispose of it and keep it from infecting the sea life around where it happened. The government and this enormous company are working together to say, oh, hey, this is perfectly okay. We've already treated it for 10 years. Let's just release it out there willy-nilly, more or less, not knowing the full effects on what can happen when this amount goes into the ocean, and doing basically a pressure campaign to convince everybody that this is okay so they can save a buck. That's all it is. And that's what happens when you have capitalism rampant in your legislation, is that you have people cutting corners on stuff exactly like this. And if I may read one more part from the last part of Common Dreams here. Last year, Jan Haverkamp, a senior expert on nuclear energy policy at Greenpeace, warned that there remains a lot of uncertainty about the effects of tritium. The moment that I hear, quote, the moment that I hear the word treated being used instead of contaminated, Haverkamp said, I can't think differently than this is kind of a newspeak. So what she's saying is like, yeah, they're playing semantics where they know that there's probably some stuff wrong with the water. They haven't studied it long enough to prove that it is safe, so they just kind of play with the wording, and they want to just dump it into the ocean, and then if it turns out that the fallout is literally fallout in this case, it turns out to be bad, they'll just say, oh, we didn't know. We studied it, and it didn't seem like it, and, you know, we didn't really have the space, and whatever, whatever. No. This can't happen. They need to be forced to keep that wastewater on the land and to be treated. I don't care how much it costs. This should not be allowed to happen. So it was frustrating to see this, and the fact that basically the, you know, capitalism strikes again. We're going to be dumping a whole bunch of wastewater from a nuclear power plant into the ocean so that the company that owned the nuclear power plant can save some money. Also, you know, this is an argument against doing anything in terms of nuclear power. I hate when people say, well, why not, we can't really do solar power or wind power or tidal power. Let's look into nuclear power, as if we don't have enough evidence now that we can't do it safely, and the fallout of these things is hundreds of years, guys. I think, like, I don't know how long it takes for uranium to deplete to the point where we can, like, get into where the meltdown happened, but you saw, like, Chernobyl still has all fucked up wildlife all around where they are. So it's crazy that we're even pushing nuclear power or as an alternative to what we are doing right now. Get off fossil fuels, but no nuclear power, no more fracking. Let's do we can do solar, wind, tidal, and other things instead of that. So, and if we're gonna do nuclear power, for the love of God, no more uranium. Let's do thorium. Thorium reactors are showing more promise than that. So if we're going to, as a transition to green energy, let's at least do thorium reactors instead of uranium reactors or whatever they're, plutonium reactors or whatever they're doing right now. So I don't even know right now if what they use. It's not thorium. So anyway, this is big news. I hope people will run with it. I don't think you'll see it anywhere other than my show. So keep fighting the good fight out there, guys. Have a good night.